Hi, my name is Leo and I'm a boat builder and a sailor, and I'm on a mission to rebuild and restore this 111-year-old classic sailing yacht, Tally Ho. Now, we had quite a snowstorm last night, and I woke up this morning and the boat was full of snow. This is hopefully one of the few times that this boat has or will have a lot of snow inside the hull, but you never know. I do have some pretty cool pictures of the boat from the 1950s with a lot of snow on the deck and a little girl peeping out the hatch. Snow isn't ideal because it's fresh water. Fresh water causes rot, so there's not a lot I can do about it right now, but perhaps on Monday we will pour some seawater into the bilges to make sure there's not too much fresh water hanging around in little gaps. Anyway, in the last video, we had 70 planks on the boat and we had 36 left to go. So of course, in the next week or two, we're going to continue planking as much as we can. I'm also going to be doing some preparations for putting the shear planks on. Those are the top planks of the hull on either side, and they're pretty important because they define a boat's shear line. That is the line of the top of the hull, and it's a pretty important part of the hull's shape and one of the first and most important things you see when you look at a boat. So Pete and the crew have been getting on with the planking. They've been doing really well. The crew's been getting involved with cutting the planks out, and they've been hanging them, filling up the space between the top side and the bottom planks. Now, I've been spending days and days fairing the tops of the frames. Basically, you just want to get that shape really nice. It wants to be pretty much perfect because the shear plank is going to go around the tops of the frames and define the shear of the boat. When we faired most of the frames before, we didn't really quite get the tops of the frames dialed in because we were leaving it until later. Now it's later, of course, so we have to do it. Now, doing that fairing has taken quite a while. Of course, there's very little to show for it unless you're really looking closely and have a batten up, but hopefully it will be reflected in the shear of the boat when I eventually get the plank on, hopefully this coming week. So one thing that I have to do before putting the very top planks on is think about what's going on in this area in the bow of the boat on the inside of the planks. Now there's going to be quite a lot of stuff going on here. There's going to be the bowsprit, of course, which is going to come out past the stem head on the starboard side here. On the other side of the boat, there's a sort of interesting arrangement where the bulwark planks come into a sort of shaped block, and then there's going to be a bow roller inside that. Now there's various different ways of sort of configuring this arrangement up here. A lot of boats have what are called knight heads. Those are basically sort of large timbers which would go up inside the planking on either side of the stem a little bit further out. This boat actually never had sort of traditional knight heads because of the sort of the shape of the bow here and the way the bowsprit comes in sort of beside the stem, fairly close to the deck. If you did have knight heads, they'd have to be really quite far back to actually clear the bowsprit. In this space, right up just behind the stem, what I think they did originally, and so what I'm going to do is put a sort of blocking in here, blocking that goes right up to the deck level. And what that'll mean is that on the starboard side here, there'll be something strong underneath the bowsprit if we ever need to fasten to it. On the port side, it's really important because it's going to have this sort of block fastened above it, which is actually going to be it's going to be taking the very front of the bulwark planks, and it's also going to be sort of supporting one side of the bow roller. And the way that that block is shaped, it has a funny sort of taper and an inverse curve to it. It's really quite elegant, but it means that it has to have its grain running fore and aft to be strong. So it's not something that can come down below the deck through the covering board. It's going to have to be bolted down to this block below deck. Now these are going to be some pretty tricky holes because I just have less than an inch of room on the back of this to come out between the breast hook and the top of the beam shelf, or the bottom of the beam shelf, to get these 4 bolts in. So getting these blocks in went pretty well. Now it's interesting to note that when I actually first got the boat, she did have traditional knight heads that come down further, go up through the deck on either side of the stem there. But those knight heads were really recent. You could tell they were cedar. They'd been put in down in Oregon, and I'm almost certain that she didn't have that style of traditional knight heads when she was originally built, because there's no way for a start that you can actually fit a knight head on the starboard side with the original size and location of the bowsprit. So after doing a bit of research, talking to a few people who are really familiar with traditional boats from this era, this was what we decided was the most likely thing that they would have done originally. It may not have been this exactly, but it would have been pretty close, and this was a pretty common way of supporting the blocking at the front of the bulwark planks for boats that didn't have that sort of very traditional style of knight heads.
Harder. Again. 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 Keep going. Keep going. Again. 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 One more. Light one. Okay. Wow. Just a major indiscrepancy here. Rowan.
What?
What's going on?
Oh. No, nothing major. Nothing major. Pretty simple.
Nothing for me to worry about?
Nothing for you to worry about, no.
Okay.
So, just the way I'm making these planks is taking the overall measurement and measuring their lengths at every station frame. And there's just somebody mismeasured. Somebody along the line mismeasured. So it happened early on, so it threw off all the measurements going aft. Frame 2 is 1 foot 1 inch and 1 1/8. Can you tell me that? Frame 2?
Frame 2 is 1 foot 3 inches and an eighth.
One foot 3 inches and an eighth?
Mm-hmm.
That's off by 2 inches.
Yeah, dude, that's weird.
What was the original?
God damn
one?
it. Oh, that doesn't actually matter.
No,
But
hold on.
that
Wait,
doesn't.
no, that might be my bad because I'm measuring to the. You said to the front of the putting or to the center.
You're gonna love the. You're loving this, Leo.
To the front of
The front of it.
Okay, that's my fault. That's my fault. Yeah. It's
I said that
inch
4
1 foot.
Yes! I wasn't wrong.
Well, not with that part. You weren't wrong. Okay, so you're at the front of it.
So Ron's correct.
1 foot 1 1/8.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Now frame 3. No, you just hold your finger there, Matt.
So I'd always planned to make the shear planks out of Angelique because it's a more durable, tough hardwood than Wana, and it's important to have a nice strong timber for your shear plank if you can, because it's going to have various fastenings through it, and it's going to have the cover boards screwed down into it, and it'll be one of the first places to get hit if the boat is in some kind of collision. Now, we used up most of our Angelique in the garboard planks and the broad planks down at the bottom of the boat, and we left some boards aside to take care of the shear strakes. Now, this morning when I started looking through the Angelique that we have left over, I realized that I hadn't planned quite as well as I thought I had. A couple of the boards down here have a lot of defects in them, so there's actually only one clear board, which is a little bit shorter than I was hoping, and then the other boards have a lot of defects. So it's going to be a big challenge basically to actually get the shear planks out of Angelique. So cutting out the shear strake I think went pretty well. It's hard to tell. I think I got one good long plank out of the board, but I still got to get the shear strake for the other side of the boat out of the same board, and I'm not certain there's enough timber there left, so it's a bit worrying. But I got one plank out of it, so that's a good start. And I've also cut out the aft plank for the starboard side, so that's the two planks which make the shear strake for the starboard side ready to put on the boat. Now you'll notice that I did make patterns for the shear strake, whereas I haven't been patterning a lot of the other planks that I've been making. The reason for that is that throughout a lot of the boat, the planks are so close to straight that you can just edge set them into place. You can cut them out straight and then bend them in. But as I've got further and further up the hull, I have noticed that I'm having to edge set them more and more. The shape of the shear is becoming more apparent in the planks, so they're getting more curved basically, and so it's becoming harder to edge set them. And so for the top planks, I decided that I would make a pattern to actually get that shape as I cut them out of the timber. However, the shear plank, because I was so limited in my stock of Angelique, I actually had to get these two planks out of one fairly narrow, fairly straight board. And so I actually, although I was able to use the pattern, I'm having to cut out the plank pretty straight anyway, and I'm going to have to edge set it on the boat, which is going to be a lot of clamps, a lot of effort to bend it, especially as it's Angelique. It's tougher than Wana, it's a little bit less bendy, and it's also a wider plank than most of these, again, which is going to make it harder to edge set. I'm sure some people will also wonder why I've skipped ahead to the shear planks rather than just continuing to work my way up the planking until I get to the shear. Originally I wanted to make the shear plank a whole inch wider than the other planks, but I wasn't sure if I'd be able to do that with the stock I had, so essentially I wasn't sure how wide I would be able to make the shear plank. And so by making the shear plank first and just making it as wide as I possibly can with the stock I've got, then at least I can split the difference of the remaining gap between the next two planks, rather than planking up to my line and then cutting out my shear and finding out I actually haven't got enough stock to make it as wide as I wanted to. So when we put the shear onto the boat, we are of course going to be covering up a lot of these holes in the frames, which contain either bolt heads or nuts, depending on where they are. And actually, it's not just here. All over the boat, there's been various places where there's been bolts through the frames. such as through the hanging knees, through the stringers, further down. And I know some people have been wondering what we've been doing to stop those nuts loosening. So what we do is just before we put a plank over a bolt or a nut, we actually tighten up that bolt, and then we stake it, which means basically just disrupting the thread with a punch and a hammer, basically just mutilating the bronze a little bit so that it actually can't just come loose on its own. And then once it's been staked, then we just fill it with our bending compound, which is a mix of dolphinite and pine tar. So we fill that up, and then we're ready to put the plank on. I don't know if you guys can hear, but it's really picked up. The wind's picked up a lot here, and the rain. The weather's been crazy this last week. It's just been like sunny and calm, and then the next minute gale force winds and pouring rain, snow, hail, and then sunny again several times a day. It's pretty crazy. All right, so I just received this rather large and heavy envelope from the local county. They spelt my first name with a lowercase l, which seems a little rude. But anyway, apart from that, I wouldn't normally film something as mundane as this, of course, but I have a feeling I might know what's inside this envelope, and if I'm correct, then it might be time for me to start talking about what's been going on for quite a while now, and what might be happening, because it might be quite important for this project, and I feel like you guys are all part of this project, and I feel like you deserve to know what's going on. So it's time for me to talk about what's been going on with the county. Now, if you are not interested in this, and I would not blame you, you can skip ahead to the rest of the boat building if you just go forward to this time. And I wish I could do the same. Now, I'm going to try to stick to the facts here and not let my emotions or opinions get in the way too much, but bear in mind that this is just my side of the story. I'm sure there is, of course, always another side of the story, and it's also possible that despite my best efforts, I have misunderstood something or gotten something wrong. So this is the situation as I understand it. Now, this whole thing has been going on for years now, what I'm about to talk about, and it has just caused me so much stress and anxiety and cost. I decided not to talk about it because it just did not seem relevant. But anyway, now it is relevant because it's actually sort of threatening the project to some extent. So this all started near the beginning of the project. As you guys will remember, I actually had a building inspector turn up here because a neighbour had complained about the shed that I was building over the boat. Much later, the county did get back in touch again, and they said that they had been receiving numerous complaints about various things related to my project. Now, it turns out all those complaints were from one particular neighbour, the same neighbour that complained about the boat shed. Now, as far as I can tell, and I have checked in with most of my neighbours, I've been around a few times to all the houses where I could find someone and explain what I'm doing, give them my details and everything. As far as I can tell, everyone apart from this particular neighbour is very supportive of the project. In fact, many have even offered to help, and people have brought me around cookies and things. It's a really nice neighbourhood, and I've helped a lot of my neighbours out with various things as well. So generally it's a good situation. This particular neighbour that doesn't like the project did have a sort of a historic disagreement with my host here before I was on the property about various things. Apparently, it even complained about the noise that the parrot makes on occasion. But anyway, they are totally within their rights to complain about whatever they want, and certainly I understand why they might complain about me. I know we make noise here, and I'm sure that they probably have been annoyed by the noise that I make. So although I don't necessarily agree with the way they tried to solve the problem, I don't have hard feelings necessarily against them. I understand that they're probably going through whatever they're going through, and you know, for whatever reason, what I'm doing is a problem for them. And in fact, I would like to apologize to them, maybe they're watching, a genuine apology for any disturbance that I've caused here, and also apologize to all my other neighbors for any disturbance, for the noise, and anything else that might have caused people problems, and thank them all for being so supportive and understanding. If anyone else is annoyed, I would just encourage them to come and talk to me about it. I'm very open to making changes or just being flexible to make things work. I would like to point out that last year we had a house actually built in the property right next door, so by far the closest neighbor, and the lady that moved in tells me that she actually can't hear us, which is hard to believe, but she's been very neighbourly, and I've helped her out as well, which is, you know, the way things should work, of course. Anyway, there were many complaints from this one particular neighbour who, of course, I'm not going to identify. There was the noise, there was too much traffic, there was air pollution. Every time we burnt yard waste, there was a complaint. In fact, I actually witnessed a fire officer being sworn at. But none of these things were really against the county code. So noise, for example, you're allowed to make noise, you're allowed to work on your own projects, and I think it's between something like 6 AM and 9 PM you're allowed to make noise, and we would only ever work from 8 or 9 to 5 or occasionally 6. And so there was nothing really they could do except for the boat shed structure. So I had to get a permit for the boat shed, and I jumped through all the hoops. I had a structural engineer do hours and hours and hours of work. They had to withstand a wind gust of 130 miles an hour or something. I had to do drainage and site plans and all this stuff and pay the fees. And the fee I was paying was pretty high because it was proportionate to the value that they said the boat shed was, which was, I think, about $40,000. Those of you that watch my early videos know that it cost me less than $1,000. But anyway, those were the fees I was paying. But of course, they never gave me the permit. Right at the end, they said, we'll only give you it if you sign this voluntary compliance agreement, which is, you know, a contract which allows the county, in this case, to do all sorts of things, such as come onto the property anytime they want, inspect what we're doing anytime they want, fine us for any breach of health and safety, and we had to, you know, agree to have the boat out of here. It didn't seem reasonable to me, and I sort of ummed and ahed about it for a long time. Eventually I spoke to a lawyer, and they said, no way should you sign this ever. So I didn't. So I never actually got that building permit after doing all that work. Now at this point, or maybe beforehand, they started watching my videos to look for code violations, and they told me that themselves. So they'll be watching this one. Hello. And of course they found some code violations, you know, minor things which had been on the property for many years before I was here, and then used those as sort of leverage to, I don't know, to get me out of here or get me to pay more money, I'm not sure. Of course, this put me in a really awkward situation with my hosts, who, you know, wouldn't have had to deal with any of this if I hadn't been here. Luckily, they've just been amazing. They're such kind, generous people, and, you know, I said right at the beginning, I will deal with all of this. Any permits that we have to get, I will deal with. I'll pay for it. I'll do all of it. You guys just please don't worry, because the last thing I want to do is be a burden on them. And thankfully, they accepted that. They let me deal with it all, and they haven't held it against me. So I can't overstate my gratefulness to them. Now, I do want to really stress that although I don't necessarily agree with the way the county has dealt with everything here, I don't have anything against anyone personally in the county. Everyone I've spoken to pretty much has been fairly understanding and friendly. It's just bureaucracy, and I've put myself in this situation. I realized that. So this all went on and on and on, and did cause me a lot of stress for a long time. I never talked about it because it wasn't relevant, but it was actually, like I said, probably the most stressful part of this project for a long time. Looking back, I wish I hadn't been so anxious about it, but it did really affect me. Now, this latest letter, which I just received, is sort of attacking at a new angle, and that angle is that we are apparently now a home-based industry. That is because I've received donations online, and apparently because I also have equipment outdoors that makes this an industrial operation. Now, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, but it's not me, I guess, who makes that decision. So I have a county hearing in March where my fate will be decided, but I have been ordered to either apply for a conditional use permit, which should cost, I think, about $4,000. But I know they won't give me one. In fact, I've actually been told by the Director of Community Development that they won't give me one, so there's no point applying. So that's not an option. But I've been ordered to either do that or take down my Patreon account and promise not to collect any money relating to my boat building. If I don't do either of those things, it's been recommended that I am fined $250 per day per person. So 3 of us here, that's $750 per day, which of course I would be paying all of it, which can be doubled if it's a repeat violation. So $1,500 a day plus other fines for the other minor code violations. So up to $1,700 per day, I could be fined now. So I don't really know what to do. I can't get a conditional use permit because I know the county won't give me one. It'll be a waste of time and money. I can't not do anything and just pay the fines because I can't afford those fines. I can't move the boat yet because I've told the county that I would move the boat. I will move the boat when it's structurally sound and I'm able to do so. Right now I don't feel comfortable moving the boat until it's got the deck laid, the bulkheads in and the ballast keel on. I can't shut down my Patreon. Well, I could, but I don't think it would help anybody. Because I wouldn't be able to get the materials I need. I wouldn't be able to hire Pete. I would have to go off and work and come back. I would still work on the boat. I would still have friends here. We'd still be making noise and causing all this disruption, but the project would take 3 times as long. So I don't think that's going to be good for anybody. So I think our only option really is just to hope that the hearing goes well and the hearing examiner has some sympathy for us and allows us a little more time to get the boat structurally sound before we move it. It's really just unfortunate that this is the way things are. I also realize that I have put myself in this situation by doing something, you know, so unusual. I've tried to navigate it in such a way that I don't, you know, piss anyone off too much, and mostly I've been successful in that, but obviously you can't win them all, and you know, in this one case it's gone the other way. So I'm sorry for the rant. That is the situation as I understand it. I hope it doesn't seem like I'm complaining or seeking sympathy. I'm not. I still feel so lucky and so grateful for being here, for doing what I'm doing. It's amazing. But I want you guys to know what's going on and know that I'm going to be probably a bit preoccupied dealing with this as I have been in the past, but possibly more so. And it may mean some changes to the project, but I don't know exactly how that's going to pan out yet. But I do know that it's going to work out one way or the other. There'll be a way through and the project's going to continue. There's no way I'm going to let something as ridiculous as this stop this boat being finished and launched and sailing it back to England and around the world. So don't worry, the answer is the county can't shut down Tally-Ho, but they have done a pretty good job at trying, and you know, they're probably going to change how this project looks and works a little bit in the next few months, I suppose. All right, well, I'm really glad that I managed to get the shear strake on one side of the boat at least. I was kind of hoping to get both sides done, but it's been a crazy couple of weeks, and then also just fairing and stuff took longer than I thought. Not that I'm making excuses, because we've all been working our asses off, and I think the boat's looking really good, and the rest of the planking crew are doing a fantastic job getting a lot of planks on, so I'm really pleased with that. Now, in terms of the county stuff, I just want to reiterate that although it is stressful, it is a little bit worrying, I know that there will be a way through it, and I'm not going to let it get in my way. One way or the other, this boat is going to get finished, it's going to get launched, and it's going to get sailed. So that's that. I do want to thank you guys for watching and being part of this project, part of the community, and for supporting it. This project is now completely funded by the generosity of people watching these videos on YouTube, which is just amazing to me. So thank you so much. And especially times like these, just knowing how many people are out there and sort of behind us just is great for morale and keeps us going. So I really appreciate it. So I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.